Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Weirdly Magical podcast with Jen and Lou. And I am Lou. I am a soul astrologer, a writer, author of 2 books, Modern Astrology and the Complete Guide to Astrology. I'm also a shamanic practitioner and a hypnotherapist. And what else? That's it. But I help people liberate themselves and create a wonderful life they truly desire.
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Duchen. I am an Akashic mentor, soul guide, teacher, author, creator of the Illuminating Journey cards. I do readings and teachings, and I help my clients to truly connect to the truth of who they are.
Awesome. So let's start with our cards. Jen, what card did you pick for this lovely full moon that we have coming up?
So this is the card that came up, the 28th Soul Portal, and there is a full moon here on this card. I find it interesting. Of course, the 28 adds up to a 10, which is a 1, kind of this new beginning. Also, what's powerful to me about this card is this kind of stone. There's a stone like ledge, almost like a diving board that leads out. And there's many options to choose from. There's the energy in the center with the water and the turtle. There's a camel and I think that's a stork. And in the distance, there's a wolf. So there's some ancient things, Stonehenge and the Colosseum, some big planets. And this opportunity, to me, I see this card as like looking at the vista of what's around, what's available, seeing the richness, the past, the future, the present, and making a choice about the space you want to dive into, what you want to commit to, what is true, what is truly aligned to the energy and the fire within you. And there's a little fire right there on that edge of so it feels very connected to all layers, to the galaxies, to the earth, and to the human experience.
It's a very Aquarian card to my mind, because that figure on the diving board, which I thought was a diving board too, looks like an alien.
That's kind of right.
And I've often, I've said over and over and over as we move into this really Aquarian period and the age of Aquarius, that it's a time that's mixed with very ancient and the future. Aquarius is a very strange sign like that. It's this mixture of learning from real ancient teachings and bringing them in a very modern, futuristic way. And it's the sign of hopes and wishes too. And interestingly, it's got Stonehenge on this card. And I just read an article saying that they've discovered that the origins of Stonehenge before it was moved are in Wales, in the United Kingdom. So I want to read more about that as well. How did they move them and why did they move them? It's kind of like, but anyway, I found it funny. I was like, oh, there's Stonehenge again.
And it has a whole underground thing that's, it's a very complicated system of communication that is not understood by humans yet. Well, certainly not in this time, but it had great meaning to what was happening and very galactic. And I find it interesting, like this card feels like it's kind of the galactic energies kind of being brought into focus.
Yeah. So the card I picked is a blue card too. Prince of Prince of Cups, which officially is the mastery of emotional desire. It's very much associated with, because the Cups cards are about love, desire. They're usually very Venusian kind of cards. But this figure is flying on the back of a bird. His chariot is on a bird, which is very much about thought and moving into the future. We can see on the card we have a snake in the what could be is a chalice, which could be the Holy Grail, and I'm not sure what he's carrying in his hand actually. I think it's kind of I can't remember what that figure is there. I'm looking in my book to see what it tells me. It doesn't tell me what it
Oh,
is.
in the other hand,
Yeah, the one he's holding down.
can't
But
really see it that clearly. It seems so small to me, so
yeah,
it's hard to tell.
but it's a
Hold it closer to the screen. Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. It looks like some kind of light.
it does. Yeah, but he's holding it very casually, almost like a paintbrush, like I'm creating and painting this stuff, and it feels to me like the whole thing is a really very like, not just mastery. This is more about creating your desires and moving towards them and coming from that place of deep inner transformation. He's kind of got his eyes down in focus of like I'm going to just tune in to my inner center and let the desires float out, and focus on my emotional desires. And of course it's got kind of an eagle of trans or a phoenix on his head.
Yeah.
So it's a very transformative card, but it's got this forward flow like your card had of I'm going to move towards my desires and create them. So that's how it feels.
Right. Yeah. Just going to hold mine up at the same time because I think it's interesting that not just the coloring, but the energy around it is there's a similarity to it in the what you're talking about the vibrancy of the movement and the
Mm,
recognition that this is the way it's done. It's almost that flowing towards what is meaningful.
yeah. Yet there's great focus as well, which is very fitting for Virgo, which brings me to the full moon. And yeah, there's focus.
I was just going to say the 28, right, which is also that, I think both the figures are very focused and, it's like, what do I need to do and want to do for this, like to really express what is true. And of course, the 28, which is a 1, is about that visioning and leadership and,
Mm,
very narrow focus.
absolutely. So that does bring me to the Virgo full moon. It's which is what we're going to be speaking about today. It's on February the 27th, pretty much everywhere, I think. Maybe not Hawaii, but so it's February the 27th, 2021, at 8:17 a.m. Universal Time, which is London time. So that's 0:17 a.m. Pacific time. So it's on the 27th most places. The full moon itself is at 8 degrees and 57 minutes of Virgo, opposing the sun. As I said before, full moons are always Earth in the middle, moon on one side, sun on the other. So they're in opposition. And the moon is conjunct Vesta by 7 degrees, which is quite wide. But since the two of these planetary bodies are carrying the handle of the bucket of all these other energies that are contained within what's called the draconic bowl, and that's within the lip of the lunar nodes. It's a very, very focused, to come back to that word, full moon. The sun's closest planet in Pisces is Venus, so they're only 6 degrees apart too, which is a conjunction for these two energies. And so that's in Pisces. But we also have Saturn at 8 degrees of Aquarius, just 10 days after the first exact square to Uranus, who's over there in Taurus at 7 degrees, and we have Chiron at 7 degrees. So we have, you know, a series of four planetary energies in four consecutive signs that are at 7 or 8 degrees. So I think that's significant too. We've also got Eris and Black Moon Lilith conjunct in Aries. There's various other things we'll talk about. Mercury will be direct on this full moon. He will have stationed direct just a week before this, nearly a week, 6 days. And Juno will have passed the South Node. So Juno was carrying the bucket of the Draconic Bowl early in 2020, and now she's contained within the Draconic Bowl. So we'll come circle back to all of these things. We'll talk about all of these energies, but it does feel like a very, very focused full moon to me, and Virgo is very much about mental focus and detail, and that conjunction to Vesta is very much on focused to what you're devoted to. So we'll talk more about that. But Jen, dive in and talk about those numbers.
Yeah, it does feel very rich what's happening. So as far as the numbers, so having this on the 27th is highly significant. The 27 is a 9. It is also the 999, so it brings in that energy of I think it speaks to that containing the wisdom, or using the wisdom of what is available. Like this new energy is now becoming more real, more connected. Of course, the 9 is the emotion, so that kind of ties into the cards as well. The emotion of what we feel, it's the highest form of knowing we are one. So it really feels like things are, with this 27, things will be brought together in some way, in a new way. And also a 9 indicates endings. So having that on this, and the 27 is such a powerful number, as I mentioned, because it's the 3 9s, but also because 27 is kind of this, with that 999, it gives you that success that comes from commitment to devotion. Really, it's that commitment to what is true for you. And it's just off the 28, just off the 29. So it's getting close to kind of what we might think of as an ending, like in the degrees, but not quite there yet. So it's that point of shift. With that, we also, knowing that we're in a 7-month, that gives us a 16 universal day, which is another 7. So highly connected to our intuition, to the inner wisdom. And this is what this month is about. It's about seeking out the inner wisdom. And it feels like with these numbers, the energy is about not only like having come to that place now that Mercury has moved out of being in retrograde, that place, that result of how do you externalize the inner wisdom? How do you live your wisdom? So there's very much about living your wisdom and being open to what you don't know, right? So using your wisdom to move into that. And then let's look at the degrees. So we're at an 8 degrees, almost 9, so very close to the 9. And then 8 is about that double zero and allowing that infinite power of as above, so below, as within, so without. So it just speaks more and more to how do you materialize or bring to life that living wisdom that has been integrated into your being, or is being integrated. So the intuition, the ability to lead with your heart and your mind, very intentional. I also find it interesting because now we have the 7, 8, and 9 for this day, and it seems to be prevalent in the actual chart, in the numbers. We have a lot of repetition of those numbers, which we'll talk about more.
And, you know, I always think of this. Well, we've got the Venus Sun conjunction in Pisces, and Venus is, what's the word? Oh, he loves being in Pisces. I can't remember the proper word.
Oh yeah, she's in the one word is the opposite of detriment. She's in exaltation. That's it.
Exalted. Yeah, Venus is exalted in Pisces. And I always think of the song Higher Love, Bring Me Some Higher Love, when I think of Venus in Pisces. And here she is next to the sun, which is the center of our core being and our solar system in that Pisces. And then Virgo at the opposite end is saying, I always think of it as the practical mystic energy. It's saying, bring this kind of agape, higher, unconditional love, bring it down to earth and use it humbly and usefully and practically. Because we've gone through many years, and I've done it myself because we're all growing and changing, of talking about all this ascension and we're all going home somewhere else and things. Virgo tells us that no, we're here. This is it, kind of thing. There may be something afterwards, but this is what we're in right now. And saying, to become whole unto oneself in Virgo as well, and really take that connection, that higher agape love that's that very Venusian, exalted, it's just this connection with the collective unconscious, with source, with muse, with mystery, with creativity too. It's a very creative energy, and then bring it down to earth and organize it really to be quite mundane, which is very Virgo as well. Virgo likes to organize and be useful and put it all in containers and make it of service. And then Mercury rules this full moon, rules Virgo. And Mercury is now stationed direct and is going forward in Aquarius, the sign of hopes and wishes and the future, to bring us back to the conversation about the cards. It's a very magical full moon to my mind. When I first looked at it, I was like, oh, there's not many aspects. But then, as always, I tune into the energies and there's so much more. One thing I've noticed is that Pallas Athena, my cosmic owl asteroid, who is the kind of the visionary of and the wise warrior of the zodiac, she's in almost exact square to Mars, like by 3 minutes at 27 degrees. And Jen's just talked about that 27. And that is a real driving forward square, in my opinion. Mars is our will, our drive, our action. In Venus ruled Taurus, it's to create abundance, but in a very solid way, not like I just want millions of dollars kind of way. It's more having value and meaning. And then Pallas Athena is saying, this is how we do it. This is the patterns and what we need to do to create this that we're looking for. So, yeah.
Right. So sorry, were you done?
I said I'll talk more in a minute. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's kind of like just listening to what I'm hearing from the record keepers when you're talking about how, truly having the sun and Venus in Pisces, and Pisces represents the creation, right? The sense of rising from the waters, of recreating, or and in this case with Virgo, it's about using our resources wisely. So it's kind of like how, well, this is certainly my experience of, say, like since I was married to a Frenchman, that the way they use the food in the kitchen is nothing is wasted, because you always use whatever kind of the leftover, the part you don't use, you always use it for something else. And so that's kind of the picture I was seeing about this whole idea of Vesta and the moon together in Virgo, is to be mindful of the resources that you have, and to be really kind of going, okay, we're creating the stores of the future, right, in the present. So the nourishment, and I see these like jars of like things that have been created.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I'm seeing that too.
Oh, good. So yeah, so that's kind of like it is, like a storeroom. It's like this is this energy of the what do they call it? The chatelaine who goes or who has the keys to the castle and is in charge of making sure everyone is fed and that all resources are used wisely. And that's all of us are being given this energy of being aware of what it is we're using towards what we're creating. Like, what are we focused on? I've heard different people talking about this idea that, you know, from the new moon that we just had on the 11th, um, begins a new cycle of 30 years. And then some people are saying that the Chinese lunar or whatever the Eastern lunar year, that is the year of the metal ox, which begins today, which is the 12th, um, starts a 60-year cycle because of the zodiac, that zodiac. So I think it's really kind of interesting because looking at this, it kind of feels like it. It feels like, yes, this, and part of the reason why we have the draconian bowl is so that everything, it's like creating a pot of stew or something, like everything's been added and put in there. And now we have to figure out what is it actually making, because we haven't had this meal before, like we don't know what it is. So anyway, that's kind of
And it's kind of like the ultimate alchemy. It's like, taking all the lessons we've learned, including the harsher lessons, and throwing it all in and like, okay, and then
right.
tearing down. I was reading a great post about the year of the, apparently it's the white metal ox as well. I didn't know that. But it's, I read a great post by a Chinese lady, actually, a friend of mine has shared, and she said it's really about shedding, and about letting go. And there's always a purifying element to the Virgo Pisces axis, and that brings you, of course, to the focus and devotion, because you've pared down what you don't need, or you've kind of brought it into the mix and created something more useful from it. So it's definitely about not being distracted by the extraneous, and also not being materialistic. We've had a long path to being focused on um, more paring down to what we really need, but not necessarily giving stuff away. It's about not really that constant accumulation that we were under the earth energy, as we move into this period of air energy. The earth age has been very much about more money, more possessions, more holidays, like buy all this stuff, and Virgo is very much about meaning too. What has meaning? Now we're being asked to look at, does it have meaning? Does it spark joy? I keep going that at the moment. Very Marie Kondo-ish, although I couldn't do
Well,
that.
I think, you know, what I'm hearing and is and feel about this is that the earth, the time we were in more connected in that way to the earth, of seeing the earth as a resource that we could use, is learning about the earth. So we've been gathering wisdom about it. Now we have a better understanding. So as we move from the physical idea of, I don't know what this is, let me see what this is, how does this work? We've kind of been in that testing ground. Is now we have a better understanding of the fact that these resources are not finite, right? They're not infinite. And it depends on our approach. And so again, moving into another field with the galactic field. So now we're kind of exploring what that means to know about the Earth and the galactic. As the galactic moves down, how will we use that? And how will we interpret and explore with that? So it's, lighting that fire of that Vesta energy, that 15, which is that alchemy, the number of alchemy of the six and the 8 are both numbers of abundance. So I think we have to kind of think about abundance and wealth and all of those things in new ways, because we have been conditioned to think about them in terms of maybe it's about having a lot of cash, or maybe It doesn't mean we can't have abundance, or we shouldn't seek abundance. We may express it in different ways, but understanding that everything's connected. And so lighting the fire to our desires means that every choice we make is impacting something else. And so, what impact do we desire to create? What are we looking for in this bigger picture?
Sure. And I did mention at the start the Saturn Uranus square. As Jen said, we're recording this on the 12th, and the full moon is on the 27th. We will have had the first of three Saturn Uranus squares that are going to occur this year, and that's with Uranus in Taurus. We and Saturn in Aquarius, which is the kind of sign of the future, but also conservative. This is shaking up our values in that similar way that Jen has been talking about. I completely agree with her. And of course, during that Earth period, there were fabulous highs to being in the Earth period. But I kind of always think at the end of the Earth period, um, the where we've gone too far is highlighted, or of any period. Actually, it'll happen in 200 years at the end of the air period too. But I always think as the period starts to shift from one an element to another, kind of the excess is brought to our attention to show us kind of where we have gone too far and where we need to pull back. Um, but we also see the rewards as well. But I think I look at when the Great Conjunction happened. The 40-year shift from Earth to air started in 1881, and in the 80s we had the greed is good kind of energy. And then we've got this huge economic disparity going on now. Now we get to deal with it. It's been brought to our attention what too much focus on material abundance only has brought us, and overusing the resources. So, yeah, we're probably saying the same thing in the same way, actually, it sounds like, but I just had that thought occur to me. So I did want to talk a little bit about Eris and Black Moon Lilith being conjunct as well, and still in square to Pluto. They're really the two primary outsiders of the zodiac that are coming back into being. And Black Moon Lilith moves very quickly back and forth. Well, for me anyway, because I use the true energy, but they are still causing this chaos and saying you're still not done yet. You're still not done bringing that outsider energy, the energy of shame, the energy of being rejected, the energy of being unheard, uninvited. Both of those are those kind of energies. They are in Aries saying, here I am. I'm not going to be uninvited anymore. I'm not going to be unheard anymore. And that's in so many ways. This is not just about men and women. It's the uninvited and unheard energy in all ways, or the shamed energy. It's kind of moving into wholeness, that Virgo again, accepting those uglier parts of yourself, perhaps, or that have been deemed ugly, at least, that we all have these horrible messy bits that we're not all nice and lovely and sweet all the time. And it's moving into this acceptance that all these parts of us are parts of us. So.
Right, and good point. I was just thinking when you were talking about how the original meaning of virgin, which is related to Virgo, is woman or person unto themselves. So hence uh, virgin wood, virgin forest is knowing the strength of who you are. I also think thinking about in terms of the opposite with Virgo, organizing materials. So if you have the Piscean, the wild ocean, the wild sea, the wild seas of all, like the seas of the galaxies, the seas of our own emotions and everything in the world, You have that wildness. And what the Virgo energy is doing is saying, okay, there is wildness everywhere. Like there is the potential from going from one extreme to the other. There's everything's available. Like you can choose that, whichever you want. Uh, but choose wisely. Like, what are the resources? What are the ingredients? What are the focuses that you need in order to have that part of yourself that may have been shoved into hiding, uh, felt resentful, in pain, not been heard. What does it need? And then the parts that maybe were overextended, overexposed, maybe they need a little adapting too. So it's feels like this is like you're using the intelligence, using your divine intelligence, your intuitive intelligence, and going, you know, I'm okay with this. When I understand the reason why I'm doing something, that I was doing it because the other part of me didn't get its equal and I needed to it's like shouting because you think you're not being heard. Or like, the idea that when somebody doesn't understand, like say somebody speaks a different language, they don't understand English, you find people will go, okay, if I talk slower and louder, they'll understand me. It's like, no, that doesn't work, right? They're not going to understand you. It doesn't matter how slowly you talk.
Sometimes it's better in that, yet sometimes it's better to go quiet and just
Right, right. So how are you using that resource? Like you're trying to communicate with someone. So, okay, that's not working. So what are you doing? So you're trying to communicate with yourself and using the resources around you to create something whole. It's like you're creating a tapestry. And to think about this idea that what is beautiful about the parts that may feel have been neglected or ugly, what is the part of the self that wants to show up that maybe can be dialed back and down, which then is so much more helpful because then every part of you and every part of what's around you gets to can contribute in the way it needs to. That's super helpful. I think the 16, I was just looking, I know the nodes are at 16, which is 7. It's that, and we talked about being a 16/7 universal day. 9, of course, the unconditional love, all of the things we've kind of been talking about, the endings, the gathering of all the wisdom, using it in a different way. But the 16 really talks about our intuition and the wisdom within us to pay attention to what's happening around us and within us. So we're not ignoring it just to get a prize, just to, so much of what we've been conditioned to is like, I got to make sure that people see me in the way that makes me look like I've got it all sussed out, or I don't know, do they use the word sussed here? So, so I have it all figured out and everyone knows I belong. And then it's the opposite. It's like the more you try to fit in, the less you fit in. So the less you try to fit in, the more everyone thinks you fit in and wants to be like you. So that's the thing. Not that we want anyone to be like anyone else, but it's like trusting your own intuition, trusting your own instincts, trusting the signs when you see danger or you feel there's something about this that needs attention. Pay attention. Follow, follow, follow. Don't just leave it hanging, because then you're saying to yourself that my intuition, my beliefs are not important. And in order to have value, which is what happens when you're an outsider, you don't think you have value. That's really where it all goes, right?
So just going back to the Pisces energy, I always think of the Pisces energy as the amniotic fluid or the womb as well. And we've been through some very challenging times in the recent months. I'm sure the whole world has, but this has a real preparation for birthing kind of energy to it in so many ways, which of course is creativity in itself. So, there's such a creative vibe to this full moon. I think of it, the dream time, because I lived in Australia for a while, which is the Aboriginal creation myth. We're kind of coming from this cosmic soup, and this is going to what Jen's just said about the seven and the tuning in and the trusting your intuition. Jupiter is also at 16 degrees. It's at 16 Aquarius, so it's almost exactly aspecting those moon's nodes, and it's pulling us towards that future, which is writing a new story. Writing a new story of your life, writing a new story of the life you desire, um, writing a new story of what you want your relationships to look like, all those kind of things. I just love this full moon, to be quite honest. And I'm loving this energy. We're recording this as the day after the Aquarius new moon. To me, Jen, I don't know if you agree, it really feels like we've turned a corner. It really feels like we're, sure, there's still shit going down. It always still does. But it just feels like it's faded a bit into the distance, and it's less important now. And that what's important is that devotion, and focus to creating wholeness in your own life. So, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. When I did my weekly reading with the cards on Sunday, what came through from the records was that this week is of completion. Like we're actually completing something. And just my own experience and asking others, like, yeah, there is, like what you're saying, that kind of ending, like that pitch, or like going up to that hill, whatever it was that has been like traumatic in some way to us. We kind of reached that peak, and now we can just like kind of breathe and go, oh, I kind of feel like, wow, there's so much stuff coming through now, because I can actually hear it that I couldn't hear before because I was so caught up in my story, my old story, that I think is significant. And then just thinking about the fact that with the nodes, which are kind of steering this bowl, is this idea of letting go of the idea that someone else's religion or someone else's belief system is your belief system, right? It's like, no, I can have my belief system and live in a world that is made up of myriad belief systems. It's just a matter of what does that look like, me, and what does it look like, me in this pool. And if you think again, this is really what this moon is about. It's about your individual purpose, your individual devotion and dedication to the thing you're here to do or experience or whatever it is, in that huge pool of creation, of that amniotic fluid that Lou's talking about. And when I think or feel into the energy that's inside that bowl, it feels like this warm, it's like a bowl of soup or something. It's like you're just stepping into this warmth, into this love, into this expansive field of, I've got you. So you can express what you need to express. You're safe, you're loved, you're held. What is it that you want to explore? So it really feels like that energy is opening up so that we can explore that experience.
Now, there is no doubt that this draconic bowl is leading to more lockdowns in places. I mean, the USA is insane. We don't have lockdowns, but I know in Melbourne, Australia, my friend said they just had another lockdown, and the UK's further lockdown, and many places. But the message of this draconic bowl is not to rail against this locking down, really. I think that doesn't mean, you're a blind follower or anything. It means making this new recipe, alchemy, out of what is just happening, and how can you take this opportunity to really be in your own personal lockdown in this bowl and making this new recipe, as Jen said. It's a great metaphor there, Jen. So thank you for that. So,
Right.
I'm a great believer in astrological energies of making the most of them instead of railing against them. It's one of my bugbears with Mercury retrograde, which we're still in, that people just moan about it all the time and go, oh, yuck, Mercury retrograde. And somebody said it to me, oh, I'm having a nightmare with Mercury retrograde. And I said, look for the gift. what message are you getting from this? What
Right.
are you needing to look at? What do you need to, you know?
Exactly. I'm with you on that. I think that, you can rail against it, and there's a certain joy that we've all experienced from being the outsider, being in disagreement with what's going on. But the greater wisdom of what this time is offering us is going, I can be, looking out, standing outside the shop or whatever it is, or the life, hitting against the windows or yelling and people can't hear me. Or I can go, okay, there's a door. Let me walk in and, invite myself in, because no one who's on the inside is going to invite you in, and nor should they. It's like, that's you. You decide. Do you want to belong inside? Do you want to be a participant in your own life? Do you want to expand your experience and opportunities? Or do you want to go, oh, nobody understands me? And like I said, it's great. It feels great to go into all of those places and be angry and have a reason to be angry. But when you think about how alchemy works, and all of this turning us, alchemizing our thoughts, our experiences, it's that opportunity to go, you know what, I played that role. It was great. I loved it. Now I want to play a different role. So it's not making yourself wrong, or anyone. Like, anyone can do whatever they want. But we get to go, I don't like playing that role anymore, or I'm done with it. I want to play something different. How does it feel to really be included and to joyfully pursue the things that I want to pursue? And instead of being fixated on what could go wrong with it, imagine, like, even if my idea is a grand idea, a big idea, people tell me it's impossible, that it's still happening and it's still going on, because I don't care about what they think. And it's not, when I say I don't care, it isn't because you don't care about people, but that you're focused on what you need to be doing, as opposed to comparing yourself, getting approval, all of these things that we have been doing for so long to fit in, right? So when you try to fit in, as I said, you can't. So stop trying to fit in. It's just like when you chase money, money runs away. So when you want to be popular and everyone's running away from you, like, oh, you're too intense. And instead, when you're like, you know what, I'm cool, I found my own stuff, anyone who wants to hang with me, then suddenly you've got all these people who want to hang with you. So really realizing how important that is. I also wanted to note that we have a lot of other, like I said, we have the 7. Pluto is at 25, which is a 7. So definitely also bringing in that awareness of what is our crusade, what is the thing that has meaning to us, where our application can be different. When we're applying to, how can I help make this happen, as opposed to, how can I use my voice to say this sucks, and actually makes me think of, like, I know I'm talking about the States, so sorry if you're in some other place, but the event we had on the 6th of January was about people saying, this isn't happening and I'm going to stop it. So how can I stop it from happening, right? What can I do to stop it? And we can see how ineffective that is. If that was a huge example of, and I'm not even talking about the pain and all the other things, but one of the examples is how ineffective it is to make change through saying, I don't want this, or this isn't going to happen and I'm going to stop it, right? So what is an effective way to get to actually be heard, or have have your voice brought out? And one of them is to not be in illusion or delusion about what you're doing, right? It's not about changing other people's minds. It's about you focusing on where you need to go.
Yeah, totally. And neither Jen nor I are saying it's not okay to have a moment. We don't want anybody to
Right.
spiritual override and not even acknowledge their feelings and things. But it's what you choose to do with it after that moment that we're talking about. It's how you turn it around and look at what you can do to have the courage to change things and change how you approach things. So yeah.
Right. And one of the things I've heard people talking about all of these things, right, is, what are they calling it? Lockdown fatigue or something like that, right? And I think that one of the things, like to what you were talking about before, Lou, is this idea that we can, when you're in, and this is what happens in alchemy, and this is what happens in life, is when we get to the boiling point. So if you think of this being a pot of soup or something that you're creating and you're adding in herbs, and hey, things are just happening, like with whatever the ingredients are, um, your feelings, your emotions, a response, all of these things. And then it gets to that boiling point. And that's what this lockdown fatigue or that experience that we had, that awful sedition, whatever it is, on wherever that is, or variation of that happening in your life, when you get to the point of I've had enough, right? That's when the magic happens. So you need to stay with the feeling, not run away from it. Because the thing is, if you don't bring it to that boiling point, you don't have that peak energy that happens, or that taste, or the thing that needs to happen to alchemize all of the ingredients so they become this juicy liquid.
Definitely. So, one other thing we've got happening is, and Jen and I mentioned her in the New Moon podcast, the Aquarius New Moon, is Cariclo. She is coming up to oppose Hygeia. They're almost in exact opposition in this new, in this full moon. So they're kind of at a full moon too because they're in opposition. So I've been really tuning into Cariclo, and this is. Some people are not going to like this, I think, but because she's this kind of graceful grace spinner, spin a new story, she's kind of in Aquarius, which is very much about stepping back and detaching emotionally from a lot of stuff that's going on, so you can see the big picture, not so that you can just ignore your emotions. Now, Hygeia has been very connected to the pandemic and lockdowns and all that kind of stuff, and she's over there in Leo, about a month from her station direct. I think things are really going to shift. By the way, when she stations direct, March the 22nd, she stations direct. But these two are opposite, and I think Cariclo is in there. She's kind of this space holder. She's in there saying, it's okay. It's okay to accept what we need to do to bring this healing. It's okay to, and I'm not being political about it here, but personally, it's okay to sit tight, hold space, wait. Things are coming, things are changing, and it's just okay to sit there and weave your new story. I see her as this sitting there with her loom weaving, or a spinning wheel spinning. She's got this very graceful, kind of patient kind of energy to me. And so kind of I see she's healing our hearts, particularly about how we feel a lot about this. So I'm
Yeah,
loving.
I, it has a really beautiful energy. And I think that's an excellent point about how, when we talk about alchemy and how we talk about weaving or any of these things, is really about timing, right? When you're weaving cloth and say, you want to get to the part, like I want to get to the part where I'm weaving green or something, but you just can't hurry that, because every skein has to go in exactly where it needs to go in order to create the greater picture. Um, and that's kind of the bigger picture of what is being created through our patience, or our willingness to sit in the pain,
And it's
sit in the
not
experience.
just
Hmm?
about the pandemic at all, of
Right?
course. Not just about the pandemic and lockdowns. It's about
No, exactly. It's about anything, right? Like, this is the thing that has gotten us into trouble, is that we have run from our pain. We've run from our feelings, even our joy, just thinking about when we were children. So many of us, when we had this amazing experience, like maybe we were so excited about painting that we painted on the wall, or we did it when we weren't supposed to, and then we colored outside the lines, and then somebody who we were looking up to told us, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that. And so that blocked our ability to feel. And so this is what this time is about unblocking those times. So we can begin to go, I remember I was in pain. I remember that I was told I shouldn't enjoy myself. And just all adds to more of that outsider energy that is healing, because all of these outsiders are inside, mixed in to the whole picture. They're all mixed in together. They are being jostled and forcing us to go, this is uncomfortable, but I'm going to stay with my discomfort because I want the rainbow that comes with when I stay with my discomfort, when I feel my feelings. Maybe I express how I feel about it in some way or another, so I actually liberate myself.
Mhm.
But I also discovered, like, once you get past your resentment about somebody or your opinion about what they're doing or the opinion about what's happening, and you actually go, what do I need? And let me express it. Everything shifts, because now you're seeing these people different. You're like, wow, I didn't realize this person was A. I thought they were B, but it really was our impression of what we weren't getting, what we weren't asking for, we weren't sitting in.
So one thing I hadn't looked at in the chart before, because I'd forgotten to add her back in, so I'm going to mention it, is Sedna. Sedna, one
Right.
of the dwarf planets, one of these energies that is really expanding our knowing and consciousness, is on this full moon at 27 degrees of Taurus with Mars, which I find very interesting. And she will have turned direct by then. She turns direct on, she just turned direct, I think, on February the 9th, just before we're recording this. And here Mars comes up to Sedna. And according to there's kind of an expert on Sedna called Alan Clay. He wrote a book on her. He's done a lot of research on her. He calls her spiritual destiny through crisis.
Mm,
I actually love that Mars is leading the way towards leaving this draconic bowl, and he's connecting with Sedna first, right after she's turned direct at that 27 degrees that we've talked about so many times. It really feels like we are being pulled to, we're coming out of this crisis, this, which is true, the true meaning of it is a big crossroads of moving into a new paradigm, a new time.
mm,
And we're starting to head towards our spiritual destiny, and what that exactly looks like, we're not quite as sure yet because we're still emerging from it. But we've been going through our spiritual destiny all the time, of course, but we're heading it towards this new form of our spiritual destiny, I think. So yeah.
right, and that's a great point. It really is. What makes me think about, it's the forgiveness, the art of the forgiveness, by having the one thing that we may have blamed. This kind of idea of the masculine energy. Oh, it's because of the masculine that we're in this situation, and having that kind of rebalanced and working in this togetherness. Like, we need that Martian energy to kind of push us into this uh, new place, and really kind of carry that flag or that star of going, this is what I'm about, this is what I believe in. And also the fire, which then connects to Vesta and what's happening with the moon, in terms of determination and courage and focus of um, looking at resources and being very deliberate, because there is an aspect here of um, which could be fearful. The aspect of, I'm leaving the known to go to the unknown. I'm feeling like I want to go towards that, but am I doing the right thing? Will I get in trouble like I did before? So this energy kind of needs to be led by our libido, like by our physical body being stirred up by this desire, right, to move forward and be so connected to what we believe in. So it's like almost like creating a new religion in a sense, like our religion within ourselves, our religion with our divine connection to creation, to the Piscean energies of the magic, the imagination, the expansiveness of what we're entering, and being able to filter it all in a very different way. So yeah, very exciting to see that how the numbers are playing out and the planets. I was just looking also at the fact that uh, 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 what the little ears. Mercury is at 13,
Oh,
which is that
I love
feminine.
that number.
Huh?
I love that number, 13.
Right, 13, the divine feminine, this number of the phoenix, the 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 rebirth energy of, and we're all in this together. Like this is the point. Like when you recognize that we are all one, that we are connected, and that we can choose to be that person that talks about what's wrong, or we can be, you know what, I just need to go forward, and hopefully others are kind of going forward with me. So that's kind of, I think, the joy. This feels like a very joyful experience that's happening, even though it's difficult, because just like you were saying, Lou, I mean, change is challenging. I mean, we're not gonna have new experiences or learn new desires if we go, well, I don't want to risk being hurt.
And
um,
shadow energies of Pisces and Virgo are basically, there's a lot of fear and victimhood in Pisces energy that we can sit in if we choose to, or and Virgo can be very anxious and very worried about things, you know. So we hope kind of through our words and looking at the higher energies that you will choose the higher path. And of course, it's hard to stop, worry and anxiety, but that's maybe where you need to tune in, listen to something inspirational, because that's very Pisces as well, and get into your creative space. What can I do? What can I do to make that new recipe, that soup, or whatever, or the alchemy? So,
and
yeah.
and to your point, is this also the nine, the compassion of the nine is like, how can I be compassionate with my pain? How can I be compassionate with my fear, instead of, I'm not supposed to do it, so let me squash it. And of course, the spirituality is off the charts. Our ability to tune into our own spirit and to the spirit of the all the fields, because of the Aquarian expanse and the Piscean influence. So really, if you think about it, it's like the Virgoan part is, um, I'm seeing a picture of a ring. It's like having a ring, like a golden ring, and pulling the threads. So it's like that weaving thing. Like, what are you weaving from, and what are you threads are you pulling? It's like when you're looking at what's available, and you're going, okay, I want a red thread and I want a green thread, or whatever. I'm going to pull the threads of despair, or I'm going to pull the threads of hope, or and expanded or creative, whatever you want, you can pull through the golden ring and start to um, bring your personality into what you're weaving. So this isn't about, let me be as flat and as kind of porridge like as as I've needed to be, and let me make it a colorful experience. And there's no need to get angry about, if you can, if you want to, but just getting angry about who you are and how you express yourself, and just coming to peace with that. Like, this is who I am. Do I want to tone it down? Do I want to expand it? Where would this energy be the most useful in my life and
So,
in this experience?
so I'm
Um,
so engrossed in this because I'm just loving this full moon energy. But as I look at the chart, that I forgot to mention our Patreon. So we have a Patreon, patreon.com/weirdly magical. For $3 a month is the suggested support. You can also choose your own dollar amount to support our work in this podcast. And we do Patreon only content every episode too. We record that after we record the podcast. And we also have swag with our swawl picture, which is the swan from Akashic Swan Guidance, which is Jen's name, and my owl, my cosmic owl astrology. And so we have t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, mugs, bags, even masks. And the link for those is teespring.com/weirdly magical. I think they've just changed their name to spring.com, but I'm sure Teespring will still point there. Or you can find the link on our Facebook page. So that brings me to the other things before we go to the symbols and finish up with all of this. We have a Facebook page, Weirdly Magical. Any likes would be welcome on there, and comments and reviews. You can review on the page. We appreciate iTunes reviews too. They are always very, very welcome, and we do go and read them. So thank you to those that left us reviews. And we also have an Instagram, Weirdly Magical Podcasts. So and a YouTube channel, Weirdly Magical as well. So come follow us, come give us some thumbs up and some likes and things, because you know what social media is like. They like people to be engaged. So, and we appreciate
Yes.
it.
Come and engage. Come and engage. It's beautiful. Share your thoughts. Connect with us. Just energetically connecting in that way just expands all of our field of connection and spreads the energy, which is so great.
So, are we ready for the symbols?
I did want to mention one more thing, and that's what's been pulling at me is the twos. There's quite a few twos here. Ceres,
Yeah, actually, I know.
um,
Yeah, correct.
uh,
Venus.
Venus,
And in
uh,
fact,
Pericles, as well as Neptune, which is 20.
Venus is
Um,
exactly at the midpoint of Ceres and correct.
right, which is very interesting. So those three female, like key planets or whatever they are, bodies, at the two, which is again about this recognition of that softness, that but also setting boundaries. So the two-sided, the relationship between the two. And then with that Neptunian 20, it's just like trying to remember that this is about building relationships with yourself, with the world, the external, the people, the experiences you want to have. The better flame is when it's two sides have equal energy, so it's balanced and supportive,
Mm,
nourishing, and connects you to all things in the way you need to be connected.
definitely. All right, then. I'll read my symbol first.
Okay.
So the Chandra symbol for, well, we always go up, so we go to Virgo 9, is a man or a person mixing cement, jammed tight with concepts, thinking about what you are doing, interpretations, evaluations, opinions, and surmises, void of heart force, believing in progress, bent upon success. You strictly, rigidly carry out what the mind dictates, a form of ignorance that is very clever. Something missing in the soul, compensations on top of compensations, exceedingly busy, hyper, with plans, projects, and enterprises. You are very good at achieving results, riveted to the phenomena, but prone to casting shadows that come back to haunt, short sighted and hooked into what is convenient and pragmatic, perfect in small outer things. All of existence becomes small outer things. I think sometimes these Chandra symbols to me are a kind of a real kind of caution, and that's speaking to what can be one of the shadows of Virgo as well. This over analytical, I call it analysis paralysis with Virgo. So I'm kind of taking this as a warning not to get too stuck on detail and integrate that opposite force that we've talked about, the Pisces energy, that creative, muse, flowy, surrender kind of energy into this full moon energy.
As well as what we started off with, this is the idea of taking action, like letting go, going forward. What's essential in order to use my resources now? Some things will come later, right? We can't do it all at once. So, I'm somebody that has suffered so much from the perfection of trying to have everything, to know everything before I get there, and it just doesn't work, right? So it's like, yeah, it's the imperfection that, like, people say it's good enough or something like that. It's just like, just go forward and do it, and then you'll know what the next step is, and you can clean it up as you go along and shift it instead of just staying stuck because you're not sure about where you're going or whatever, because those are all unpredictable anyway. So the Sandra, the
Fabian.
Sabian symbol. I couldn't remember. The Sabian symbol. At least I got the S right. The Virgo 9, an expressionist painter at work. Keynote is the urge to express one's individualized sense of value regardless of tradition. So here the individual is seen reacting against cultural standards and stereotype ways of interpreting their perceptions. And a statement of uncompromising self-reliance, which may even imply a kind of defiance and a challenge to society. The mind is seeking to discover the character of the basic and true foundation of individual selfhood, the tone or logos of individual being. It's the arm tone. In the process, however, what is expressed is usually the reflection of a deep catharsis with emotionally charged and often tragic overtones. So this is kind of bringing us into the technique of transformation of the personality. What predominates is a sense of inner conflict and an over self-conscious attempt at being oneself. But there's a great difference between being in an origin of development pregnant with futurity and deliberately sought for originality. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's also kind of a warning in a sense, is like this idea of being so self-conscious about what we're doing that we've got to tell everybody, we've got to over-explain it to ourselves so that we fit in and convince, as opposed to do this for the joy of doing it, to become more of who you are, not because it's going to impress someone. I think we touched on that when we were talking about how important that is.
Allowing it to come out rather than force it. And that analysis paralysis. Am I doing it right? That's very Virgo too.
Right, exactly. Overthinking it instead of just enjoying it and being okay with like making a mistake or looking foolish or having somebody judge you, because hey, people judge us anyway, so who cares, right?
And one way of doing that is taking yourself out of yourself, kind of thing. And Virgo is very much about how useful it is to the world, to others, to your family, to and that doesn't mean over giving and losing yourself, but it just means what am I giving to the world, kind of thing. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I tend to think of it as focus on the emotion that is joyful. I'm experiencing, I'm expressing, I'm whatever that is, whether it's giving to someone else, whether it's painting something just for the joy of it without having any preconceived notions, so that you can expand your experience. Like, when we talk about having your emotions of sadness or yeah, I really want to sit with how it feels. Like, it's the same thing. Why not? Right. It's just like, then you have to have, like, I can't dwell in the paralysis. Like, I did all these terrible things and so I'm not worthy and I can't act. It's like, no, I feel bad. Okay. How can I comfort myself? And now I need to move forward into the next thing. Right.
So
I
when
can grow.
I don't mean you have to go and start volunteering everywhere. It's just that taking the focus off, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? It's like,
Right. And some people may want to volunteer or whatever. Like, there is no wrong way or right way to do it. It's just do what feels
exactly.
true to you. So if you enjoy,
Well, by doing a painting as well, as Jen said. So.
right. It doesn't matter what it looks like. That's the external representation is just a representation, like you being you, whether it's something that, oh, I want to go and volunteer, or I want to go garden, it doesn't matter, as long as that's true to you for this moment. And maybe you do all of those things, you know.
All righty. So Jen, how can people find you? We're at an hour and 10, so I think we've been going a bit long the last couple of times. So how can people find you?
So people can find me on my website, jenduchenne.com, JENDUCHENE. I have a YouTube channel where I do weekly videos, Akashic Swan Guidance, or Jen Duchenne Akashic Swan Guidance. I have a group on Facebook, Akashic Swan Guidance, which you can join. My page is Jen Duchenne. Yeah, and if you want to connect with me, book a reading or talk to me about it, learn classes, I teach Akashic classes and other classes. You want to buy a deck of the Illuminating Journey cards, it's all on my website.
And I'm Louise Eddington, LouiseEdington, and it's louiseeddington.com is my website. Both links to buy my books are both available on my website. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube at Cosmic Owl Astrology. I also have a group called Cosmic Owl Astrology Cafe that's a little bit more private if people wish to comment more or less publicly rather. And yeah, I do readings, and I do two kinds of readings, and I also have a membership community which I'm very focused on growing. So come join us. And again, as a podcast, we have our Patreon. Come join us over there. We're going to go and record Patreon only content after this. And that's patreon.com/weirdly magical. And basically, if you Google Weirdly Magical, Akashic Swan Guidance, Cosmic Owl Astrology, and our names, you will find us everywhere. And so we thank everybody very much for watching and listening. We really appreciate you. This podcast has taken off in ways we never dreamt of, and it's going from strength to strength. And don't forget, we have our swag.
Wow.
I went to the grocery store this morning, and I could see people eyeing it up. I was like, oh, that's fun.
It is fun. I know, it's such a cool, when I look at it, when I put the t-shirt on, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. It's got such a fabulous feel to it. And I'm like, oh, I like this. Wow.
Me too. See the swow howl.
Right. Oh, we don't even know. We'll have to practice our swell howl.
So it's goodbye from Lou.
And goodbye from Jen.